Well, we're on to our last talk of this first section of the Ignite style topic. So I know this gentleman's going to nail this. He's done it before. He's been an Ignite speaker. Ben McCall, he's a leadership development consultant at Standard Register. And Ben's going to talk with you about company DNA, your company brand versus culture, and what should HR focus on. Ben, here you go. We're going to turn on the timer on this one too, right?
Now you're going to start stressing me out. How's everybody going this morning? Okay, I got to get used to this clicker and everything. Basically, you've heard my company. Basically, I focus on leadership development for our core tiers, our executives, director level and up, and also talent management within the company. So every day I'm thinking about the way the culture and the brand of our company focuses within our employees, as well as how we handle leadership development for the company. So that's a little bit of who I am. My background is started out in sales and marketing. So I'm definitely a person that feels that we all are selling and marketing something. It's just what are we doing to sell and market it. And I've spent time in organization development, talent management, and training development. Culture versus brand. Typically, it's whether it's innately or been talked about on a regular basis, it's typically been approached on PR and marketing. That's typically when we think brand and culture, that's what we're really talking about. But for the last couple years, we've been used to it and dealing with it within human resources, but we haven't had to champion it as much. So even though some people feel that we own and are a part of the culture and brands that we create within a company, HR hasn't typically been involved in that case. So a little bit of a brand definition. It's a number of different things, but this is one thought and definition that I thought was very key. It's a personification of a product or service, even your people and what happens within your company. We may start and create a brand, but we can't control how that brand is delivered and ultimately talked about outside of our organization. The culture is anything from the policies we create, the way people treat each other, to the way people view us inside and outside of the organization, whether it's for your talent that you're trying to attract. Many of us think of different things with P&G, GE, Toyota, locally, EW Scripps, the companies that are represented here. But ultimately, the culture internally in your organization is the atmosphere that grows from all those moving factors within it. So you can take steps working towards the positive of your culture, involving people, talking to people, communicating. We talk about that all the time, but often we don't define communication, what it is for us. Or we can take steps down the hot road, which is not very hot in here, but down the hot road to get warmer into a negative area for our cultures in the organization. Now, many times, culture and brands change. While we all know Steve Jobs, his dress, his innovative thinking, the way he approaches everything has not changed over the years. The way we view Apple does, from its products to the company as a whole. And many times, others evolve within their cultures. Even here in Cincinnati, we think dunnhumby, a new company here. People are starting to get realm around the culture of them. P&G has changed their culture, the way they look at a lot of things over the last couple of years, and also with the way they address their products and services. So while they may change and evolve, we also need to do the same thing. Human resources professionals, we're not new to this. We deal with it. We have it on a regular basis. The time from when the employee or the candidate wants to get into a company for the time they leave and possibly come back, we have some say in the way that's viewed. So while we address it and are used to it on a regular basis, we're not necessarily used to it. So we're not new to it, but we are new to this. So essentially, when we're talking about brand and culture for your organization, some questions I'm going to ask you as we go through is, what are you known for? Not only as a company, but also as human resources within your organization, with the external partners that you have, with the internal vendors and external vendors, as well as what culture do you create? Sometimes we treat our employees great. Over the last couple of years, a lot of people don't feel like they've been treated as well. And usually that perception comes out. As human resources people, a lot of times people think outside of HR, I don't like them. I don't want to deal with them, and then something's wrong. Typically, when we're in HR, we don't want to deal with people until something's wrong. And we need to get out of that mindset. And that means we have to take a couple of approaches. So here's some thoughts and questions that you may want to ask yourself very honestly. These are questions for you. What are you currently doing within your organization? Best practices. They're good and bad. Good because we can share ideas of how things and people are being approached and done within our organizations. It's something that we're doing here today. Bad, we can tend to get into the same cycle and repeat the same exact things that we don't want to repeat. So think about that as you're going through. And we can't compare apples to oranges. From good to great, a few years back, big book, everybody wanted to implement it, but they wanted to implement it in pieces. I like this part, I'm going to use that. When Jim Collins says himself, you can't implement it in pieces. You have to implement the whole thing in order for it to work. And when you're trying to compare a manufacturing company to a global supplier of consumer goods and packages, it may not work, especially from the size and the products that you have within your organization. And for human resources, we need to think about that. We can't be bogged behind the work. It's tough. We're dealing with employee relations issues. When you're dealing with talent management and recruiting, you could have one position with 500 applicants, whether they're qualified or not. But we can't let open enrollment, which is happening right now, get in the way of us getting out and talking to people. And that means we need to be visible. Don't stay behind your desk. And even though you're a business partner, which is a lot of the term and the positions that a lot of us are starting to have, even though you are a business partner, just don't partner with just that group. Do the work, but allow people to get to know you and HR for the brand and culture you want to create. And that means you also need to communicate and listen. One thing we do at Standard Register on a quarterly basis is we have town hall meetings. Everyone calls into one line, and anybody who's physically in the Dayton office will actually come in to one conference room. People can ask questions after the presentations are over, and they can deal with things there. Then we also listen. Not listening just intently, that we're talking one-on-one, but we actually give feedback to people on the things that we're doing and if we're going to implement it or not. Because the last thing you want to do is call everybody in your organization a leader and then say, well, we're not going to use that information. Or you're not even going to talk to them about it at all. So you got to communicate and listen. You also have to own your mistakes. Many heard about Gap and they're changing their logo. When you make a mistake, whether it's in policy or approach and the way you deal with your people, you need to own it and admit it. The worst thing you can do is try to ignore it. So if there's a good policy or a thing that you wanted to change that did you change and it wasn't accepted by your employee population and that's your core and you know that they're right, not in all situations, but in this particular, you may need to change back and admit it. People will respect you a lot more. And we need to show the business because we are integrated within every aspect of the organization, from the time an employee sees us, to benefits, to compensation, to the time they exit the organization, that we're more business than anybody else you have in your organization. And that goes back to the point of we're business partners, but we need to be business people. That means understanding the cycle of the business, our products and services, and how it relates and feeds into our jobs. The biggest thing you can do for your brand and culture is to fix your hiring process. The way you communicate with candidates, the way you talk to employees internally that are wanting to get into a new position, or like my counterpart earlier said, letting them know that you're not the right person for this job and being honest about it, having the honest conversations. The best thing you can do, if you're brave enough, and if your organization is not too small, change your name on your resume, send it through your own ATS. Send it through your own recruiters. If you want to see how your employees or your candidates are being treated, that's the best way you can do it. I've only talked to one person who has done it, and they were amazed at how it is. So if you want people to love their jobs, love your organization, especially in the economy that we are in as far as the potential leave of absence that people are going to be taking when the economy gets better, if you want to keep people, you need to develop them in the right positions, fit their skills to those positions that they're in, and also foster an environment that will allow them to love and do what they love, and also do what they love outside of work as well. So with that, thanks a lot. If you want to stay connected, or if you have any questions in general about what I've talked about, or just want to connect, I have no problem with that. I'm one of the few and the 1%ers that actually use social media, and I'm not scared of it. So go ahead. Thanks a lot, and appreciate it from the top.
Thanks, Ben. Well done.